morning. Welcome to Coffee Chat with Susan, and I am in Big Island, Hawaii. I live an off-grid life. As you can see from the background, it's not fancy, but it is full of peace. It is the first time in my whole 65 years that I can remember being at peace with myself within and with, around the world. Today is, I have to look and see what day is, Saturday, October the 11th. And I'm doing a video today because I woke up really excited. I signed up for the Autism in Black Girls and Women's Conference for the weekend, and it is the best decision I have made in a very long time. I got to tell you, the conversation in there was amazing. Even though, it's really geared towards autistic adults, AuDhd like myself, or just neurodivergent ADHD, who are also raising either autistic or neurodivergent children. So there were a lot of mothers in there that really brought insight to me that I hadn't even thought about for so many years when I was raising my own neurodivergent children. And so it really turned on that light bulb, and I was like, oh my gosh, these are the topics that I want to be talking to my older people like you, 40 plus, because once we get older, we forget a lot of times what our childhood was like. Oh yeah, we will remember those whoopings. We remember the times we got in trouble. We will remember the times that we were told or just physically signaled with body language that we were not enough or we were wrong. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Some of those things that really shed light on my childhood, my mother's parenting, my father's parenting, my grandparents' parenting, and how much the cultural awareness was at that time and what it is compared to what it is today. Now, I am 65. I was born in 1960 during the beginning of the civil rights era. What a lot of people don't know is actually the civil rights era did not start in the 60s. They started in the late 40s, where we had advocates back there speaking up for black rights, because we didn't have any rights in the 40s and 50s like we do today, So we did get those rights in 1968 with the ACA, which they're trying to dismantle today, and that's what's disturbing all of us. I don't know about you, but it's really throwing my emotional regulation off balance every single day. But we're not going to talk about that right now, right? Today, I want to talk about our childhood. Now, if you're 40 plus, a lot of this is going to sound really familiar to you. And the older you are, you probably experience more of this than those in the 40s. So let's start with what the title is today. Oops, I spilt my milk again. When that came up in the first conference talk, which was wonderful, I'll have to put the speaker's name in the description because I can't think of it right now. She's a wonderful speaker, and if you're a parent, a grandparent who's struggling with autistic children, and you are autistic too, or level 1, any level, I really suggest following her. She is experiencing the trenches with the parenting, and that's where her life experience is focused right now, whereas I am focused on this phase in life. So I am not afraid to refer you to other people who are also professionals in the field, or just professional by their lived experience. That's something we forget. And I forget also that not only am I certified in a lot of different things, because that's what we do, I am a certified lived experience professional through my own lived experience and through my children's. So we have to remember that we have a lot to offer the world. And you don't really have to have a piece of paper to do that. So start thinking of yourselves as capable and not incapable. So let's start with the spilt milk. Oh my gosh. When she said that, I immediately felt seen and heard. And you know what? 4 or 5 other women in the chat did too. They were immediately, "Oh my God, you're spying on me. You're showing me out. You're calling me out," because we felt finally seen and heard and understood. If you're not black or in a brown marginalized community, some of these things, you may not have experienced, because we, in that group, it was autism and black, so we were covering the black culture, the black lived experience, which we know is different. Even though I have white ancestors, yes I do, and a full-on white sister because we've got 2 different dads, we lived differently. Even though we have intersections of compatibility, our raising, our upbringing was totally different. Where she had a lot of encouragement. She didn't, as from far as I know, not a whole lot of mistakes pointed out, a lot of acceptance, a little bit more gentle parenting at the time, whereas in our black culture, brought from hundreds of years forward, having to be enough, having to present a facade of perfection to be accepted by society. Our mothers and fathers really worried about that for us, because at those times, I was in the 60s, it was dangerous just to exist. It was dangerous to be seen in places where you weren't allowed. So I even, this is how much my mother loved me, and she was only trying to do the best for me. She sent me to charm school. There was a store called Federal's at the time. It was a lot like Kmart. It was a competitor in Michigan. And they had a charm school 6-week program that, I was the only person of color in there. But my mother threw me in there. She was like, "I don't care. You're getting this." And it had a fashion show at the end. And girl, y'all, that was hot. I had to choose something in the store. Choose a fake leather vest and leather skirt and a white turtleneck. Girl, nobody could tell me I was not the hottest girl there. And I felt so proud of myself for finishing that program, learning, how to set a table, which silverware to eat for different things. This video may go on a little bit longer, but I don't care, because these are things that I want to talk about today. And if you're interested, you'll stay. If you're not, have a good day. But it was such an interesting course taught by a white woman. And I could see how uncomfortable she was. But back in the day, we were still segregated. And segregation had just been lifted. And so this woman was out of her comfort zone. And so, but I still had problems. The reason my mother sent me Well, it's because I was clumsy. I was the clumsiest kid she ever had. I was adopted, by the way. So her other three children were natural born and a part of her lineage. I was a weird kid from the jump. I was curious. I asked questions 24 hours a day, and I drove people crazy. I drove my teachers crazy. But I wanted to know why. Why? Tell me why. Well, what if? What if you do this and this and that and the other? I was an inquisitive kid, and it is looked down upon for kids to ask questions and to be inquisitive. But we always say, our parents say, our teachers say, there's no question, no stupid question. But that's a lie. It might not be a stupid question, but every question is pretty much irritating. You know, especially if you are a type of person like us who just don't accept because I said so. So in the black home, because I said so, that is a signal to end the conversation. If you keep talking, you know what's coming out. We're going to have a fight. We're going to have a bad day. And so I had a lot of bad days because I'm going to ask you. And so my mother finally gave in and realized that I had a lot of questions. I was a clumsy kid. I would spill my milk on the table at dinner almost every day. I was so anxious about doing the right thing, and I was quick and you're a kid and you don't think, and the first thing I do is reach for my milk, boom, the milk is all over the table. It wouldn't be a problem if it didn't have a white lace tablecloth on it. That was a problem. And so every day for a long time, my mother refused to take that white lace tablecloth off. And I would be anxious sitting down to dinner every single night, or even lunch, trying not to spill that milk, concentrating not on spilling that milk. Because if I spilt the milk, I'm in trouble again. I'm going to get fussed out. Mom's going to be mad. The face will come out, and I shrink. I'm done. And then when you're done, when you don't answer questions because you're shut down, you get in trouble. So you're darned if you do and darned if you don't. That wore on me a whole lifetime. And you know what? I honestly, at first, took that same perfectionist behavior into my parenting skills. My poor daughter still has anxiety to this day. Gosh, my boys, they were twins and they were hurricanes. So I got quickly used with them, with my house being a mess, the table being a mess, stuff being spilled. I was either going to accept it and go with the flow or be my mother. Again, I said I love my mother. My grandmother was kind of the same way, but she was a little bit more, she didn't get upset as much. She understood I was different because she took care of children who were nonverbal or minimally verbal and who had some developmental difficulties other than autism. So she knew she was dealing with a different child with me, and so she was really a lot more patient with me than my mother was. Love my grandmother to this day. But yeah, that spilling the milk. And so as we grow up, I am still conscious. Even though I have my coffee cup, I have 2 or 3 other cups and water behind this thing you can't see. Is always a drink, something behind. So I'm still aware that I could spill a drink at any time. That's just kind of why I get really, really heavy coffee cups, because it's harder for me to knock that over. So you see how these childhood memories can pop back into your head and make you think about all of that emotional upheaval that you felt, how you still carried that with you to this day, possibly. And I'm here to tell you that you were normal. It's okay not to be perfect like any other cookie cutter kid. It's okay to spill the milk sometimes because, we could just wipe it up. It can't really destroy anything. And if it does, we could usually fix that too. Sometimes taking us back to our childhood can remind us that those incidents were traumatic for us. And being trauma informed is very important. I've taken courses on trauma informed for coaches, but I still don't, because I'm not a therapist, I still don't dig deep into people's trauma. I suggest seeing a trauma-informed therapist that is culturally informed with your culture, no matter what culture, whether it's European culture, Scottish, Irish, Asian, Indian, black, white, whatever. Find someone who is culturally informed with what you went through in life and can understand, see your difficulties, and be heard by you. I'm going to thank you today for popping in for this session. And I will be talking more on some of the insights that I got from this conference as I go along the conference over the weekend. There's just so many things that it just popped that bubble. And I'm writing, I write. So I'm writing about those situations and how we can come out of those, out of being stuck in our past behaviors because of those traumatic events. We can change our thinking. We can accept, okay, that happened because I was busy. I was a busy kid. That's who I was. I was overstimulated, or my stimulation was seen as negative and it wasn't redirected properly. So when we start to see ourselves in that light and stop blaming ourselves for not being this perfect kid that we think our parent wanted, we can start accepting ourselves as we are. We can start accepting our parenting mistakes. We can start accepting our grandparenting mistakes. And we can start accepting that we are not going to go to our kids and control them and tell them what they're doing wrong and what they should do instead. We're not going to do it that way. We're going to be a living parent, a different parent who accepts our children the way they are, and still, even as we're older, we're still their parent, silent under quiet reparenting. Okay? Because we're still reparenting ourselves. We have the right to say, okay, my mother or my father, caused some things in my life that have taken me years to get over or to understand. We can learn to forgive our parents, or whether they're parents, caregivers, foster care, step-parents, whatever. My nose is itching. We can learn to forgive them for being human and not knowing and not understanding, because this wasn't around when we were young. This really wasn't around when my kids were young 43 years ago. I was blamed for their behaviors, for their impulse control. The therapist, he was Indian, basically told me, I'm the problem. I'm doing this wrong. And so we were in the middle of domestic violence. How do you think that made me feel? Horrible. And honestly, I was just able to let go of that self-blame and self-loathing a few years ago. So you are not alone. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of other black and brown and marginalized people out there who are on the spectrum, like you and me, whose children are on the spectrum, whose parents were probably on the spectrum but didn't know and probably still won't accept today. We're not alone. And there are spaces that we can go and be ourselves and unmask and truly enjoy each other's company. Now, one of the things that I found, and I thought about it after it was over, I found it was very interesting that each and every one of those women in there, including the presenter, was saying, I hate groups. I'm not good in any groups. I don't like groups. Well, you know what? We proved ourselves wrong in that moment and didn't even realize it, because we were having such a good time in that live group. We were talking, we were chatting. Each and every one of us had something to say. So it's not that we don't enjoy being in groups. We don't enjoy being a group where we don't feel welcome, we don't feel seen, we don't feel heard, and the culture is nothing like ours. And if you're white, you may feel the same way in black groups or marginalized groups. And I'm including the LGBTQ plus community too, because they're marginalized and their groups are different. Whereas, we all need to find some place where we fit in. So, we fit in there. So that's what I'm trying to do with my page. Eventually we will have a group when we find the right topic and where we feel comfortable and we fit in. And I think this is the start of us coming out and being able to comment and feeling comfortable putting ourselves out there, because it's scary today to put yourself out there on these internet streets, because there's people waiting to attack us. People from within our own culture waiting to attack us. And people who just don't understand. And so keep the faith, keep going, keep coming back, because it works if you work it. You can tell I've been in recovery for over 20 years, emotional recovery. And it's very important. Thank you so much for coming today and having a little coffee with me, or your tea, or whatever you're drinking. And just thank you for accepting me as I am. I appreciate it. Aloha.